So once you hit 50, the world tells you all sorts of things you need to start doing. Start going to the doctor more often, start looking after your health, start getting strange vaccines, and start saving more in your retirement fund. And these are all good things. But in this video, I want to share with you 5 things I stopped doing once I turned over 50 and how these have improved my life and the self coaching tools I've used to get there. So, if you're navigating midlife and looking for grounded, no woo self coaching tools that you can use to get through this period and beyond, subscribe and join me here on Self Coaching for Skeptics. So, the first thing I did was I stopped saying yes out of guilt. That's not to say I don't feel guilt sometimes when I say no. But what I did find is if I was saying yes just because I was trying to people please or felt a little pressured, it ended up feeling and growing into resentment for me towards that person or that commitment that I'd made. And that didn't feel good. It also meant it felt a little dishonest. So I'm saying yes to something when really I don't want to. And I get it. Sometimes that feels really automatic, particularly if you've been a person who said yes to try to, support people or help people. But maybe you've noticed that that can feel a little bit like not the truth and you kind of grin and bear it. Also, it meant that I was kind of prioritizing other people's needs over my own preferences or needs. And that also doesn't feel good. And then it's kind of not taking care of yourself. And that's something you want to you want to kind of look at. One of the tools I use is learning to kind of sit with that discomfort of not saying yes and being okay with that. So we'll talk about saying no in just a minute, but I do want to just give you an example. For me is I have said yes in the past to going to outdoor concerts or live music events, particularly ones at night. And I think these can be great. I did that for loads of decades of my life out in the 20s and 30s, 40s, and beyond. But I found recently that I just didn't really enjoy it. I don't like being up late. I found it loud. I didn't like not having a place to sit. I didn't like getting home, past midnight. I found it really hard to get to sleep. And I felt like it really pressured my entire next day and, didn't just ended up feeling regretful. It's not to say I don't like music and that I might not do it again, but I definitely want to do it because it's something I want to do or a band or an event I want to see, and not just because somebody else wants me to. Now, what I do instead is I might just practice saying a simple no. What I found at first when I started to not say yes was that I was spending a lot of time justifying my no, like spinning out and giving all these reasons. And there's two problems with this. One is that people might try to pick apart your reasons and tell you why you should say yes. And the other was it's just not necessary. I think most of us can handle a little disappointment and just saying no, oh no, I've got plans, thank you. And not offering that explanation, even if your plans are to be at home and being in bed by 9 o'clock. That's not a problem. That's where you're at. I will also just add here that sometimes this is not the same as saying yes to something that you may not want to do, but you're going to do it because you want to please somebody else, but in a reason that you like. So sometimes I will watch basketball with my partner. I'm not a huge sports fan, but if he really wants somebody to watch a playoffs with them and it's only available at home, I will do that because it makes me feel good that we're spending time together. I don't feel pressured. I like my reason and I don't feel guilty. So again, it's saying yes with some caveats and also try practicing that no. One thing I also stopped doing was expecting happiness to be the end goal. And that's that's something to kind of let that sit for a second what I mean. And with the positivity culture that we're all experiencing, I think it's great that we're talking about mental health and wellness and bringing all that to the front and center of conversations at work and at home. But I think we need to realize that doesn't mean that we're all supposed to be happy all the time. And you may already believe this, but for a long time, I noticed that I would, if I wasn't feeling happy, then something was going wrong. And once I got a little bit older, I just realized that it's just not realistic. And it means you're chasing happiness. For me, created kind of constant self-judgment because I wasn't there. And honestly, I just started to realize without the other emotions such as sadness, grief, anger, then you need the contrast to happiness and joy to really make it make sense. So I instead decided to redefine kind of and again, it's more of a journey than an end goal, but it's kind of growth and evolution. So for instance, when I started this YouTube channel, it has not been like rainbows and daisies for sure. There's been a lot of self growth. There's been a lot of, I will be honest, some blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe not the blood part, but it's been difficult. And I kind of expected that because I knew there was going to be a really high curve as I was learning everything. But there's also been some successes. And honestly, the time I feel the most happiness or joy is when someone comments. So this is a little hint to comment that I've reached them or they benefited from something I've said. So if you haven't done that and you're enjoying this video and getting something from these tips, be sure to do so. But knowing that you've helped somebody makes it all worth it. And it's been great for me. And then it brings up all the stuff I still want to address, and feeling that sense of success and accomplishment are really what it feels better to me than for a goal than happiness. The other thing I stopped doing was trying to control other people's moods and reactions. And I'll be honest, I'm not 100% on this. I still would like to control people and tell them how they should behave. But I think we all know that this is pretty impossible and kind of exhausting. Most people resent it when we try to manage their emotions. I mean, think about yourself. Do you like it when, for example, someone tells you to calm down or cheer up, and you're like, "Ugh, you know, that's not the reaction I'm having." For me, it can feel really invalidating when someone says that. And it's also kind of based on fear, a fear I was having, and it's something taking it personal. So when somebody else was having a mood or a reaction, I was thinking, oh, this is about me, not about them. And not only is that true, I am not the center of everybody's world, you'll come to find out, but it's also about what they're bringing to things. So the tool that you want to remember here is that there's a clear separation from what's going on for that person and what's going on for you. You've got the model you're working from, and they've got theirs. And when they can collide, the signals can get kind of mixed up. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're constantly trying to manage somebody or tiptoe around moods, maybe this is something you could consider giving up, For example, I had a partner that wanted to give me his opinion on a family dynamic. And, he started this off by saying, I just want to tell you how I'm feeling. I really don't want to discuss it. And I don't want your feedback. I just feel like I got to say this. So straight away, my antennas are up because I'm like, I'm probably going to want to do all those things that you just said I can't. And I was right. But it also, knowing that I couldn't control that, diffused what could have been a really tense moment and me wanting to jump in and defend and fix things to just being there and holding space for that moment and for that person to let me know how they were feeling, sharing their emotional experience and support without trying to control. And even though I didn't necessarily agree with that and I really wanted to say some things, I knew it was more important for our relationship for me just to let that be and let that person feel like they could talk to me in that way. And I think this is something that came with me deciding not to kind of control it, because I think before, where these tough conversations might have been avoided because I was taking things personally, it now feels like something where you can be a little bit more capacious and allow for those kind of conversations that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. But when I don't have to control it, I can just kind of let go a little bit. What's one emotional reaction that you've stopped trying to manage in others? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you might be dealing with. So, the fourth thing I stopped doing was thinking I had to feel ready to start something, to feel motivated. And the thing is that I figured out that motivation is a feeling and not a requirement. That waiting to feel ready, for me at least, ended in endless procrastination and that you rob yourself of building some self trust. And what I mean by that is if you give yourself something you're going to do, I'm going to record this video for you today. And then I show up to record the video and I'm just not in the mood. I've got other things I want to do. I have somewhere I have to be in a bit. I just don't feel up for it and I don't do it. Well, I then can't trust myself. I didn't follow through with what I planned to do. And I want to provide this service. I really do. But I also expect that in the moment, I may not feel like doing it. And I think that's okay. I do think it's important to remember too that action can create that motivation. So, not necessarily the other way around. Again, there's been times when I've just picked up my phone and recorded something because I've felt, completely motivated. But most of the time, it's not. I have a particular time I record and I'm hoping that I'm in the mood, but I'm not always. But I'm always willing to follow through with that action. And that helps. It also helps create that structure where I will show up. And once you do that a few times, you show up, you follow through, you do it even when you're not in the mood for, man, are you proud of yourself? And you're creating something. You've done the thing you said you were going to do, and that feels great. And be sure to celebrate with that kind of thing, that you followed through with that thing without inspiration. If you've ever followed through with something when you really didn't feel like it, let me know what you did as a tip or trick, because again, I face this all the time, so I'd love to hear about it. So, last thing here, friends, is I stopped needing to know why I felt bad in order to move forward. And let me dig into this a little bit. I found a lot of times I would psychoanalyze why I was doing something, why my mood was, and that would really keep me stuck in these loops of why am I like this, or why do I always get upset when this person is angry, or why do I always try to control my partner's mood when he's sad? Why do I always try to make him happy? You name it. If you're psychoanalyzing and spending a lot of time figuring out the why, sometimes I felt like for me, that was an excuse not to move forward. Now, I am not talking about real trauma here. If there is something you need to unearth with the help of a skilled therapist or psychoanalyst, please do that. This is not about those kind of things. Rather, this is the kind of those habits or general, reoccurrences that happen in your life that you don't like, but rather than just maybe thinking of some ways to move forward with that, which I think is what coaching does for me, is you kind of got stuck in like the let me look into the navel gazing part of it, of the why behind it. And the way I sort of realized what worked for me was just deciding that, oh, this is because I'm human that I feel this way, and probably the shortcut is that I'm scared of something. And that's almost always correct. Not always, but I would say 95% I'm scared of something and I'm just having a human emotion. Again, there may be some times where it's worth digging into that, or where you might want to disrupt a certain sequence that you're of thoughts. But a lot of times, if I can just tell myself, hey, nothing's gone wrong here. This is how our brains evolve. They're always on the lookout for danger. They're trained to be fearful to look after us. And also, it's not, I don't want to stay stuck in this loop. What can I do instead? So again, accept fear as part of the process and ask sometimes, like, what's the next step I can do? Again, I add a lot of structure to my days. So when I do get into this mood, I know what the next step would be. But that can be a great question to pause to. If you've ever gotten stuck with trying to figure yourself out mode, maybe you're sign to move ahead instead of overthinking. Just something to consider. So remember, this video are 5 things I decided to let go of in my 50s, and honestly, they've helped me feel calmer, clearer, and more honest with myself. And that's had the knock-on effect of improving my relationships, not only with others, but also with myself, importantly. So if you're in midlife and you want some grounded tools and not hype to coach yourself through these shifts, hit subscribe. I share new videos each week, and I'd love to hear from you and see you here again. Thank you.